Today we're diving into the world of compact video creator cameras with Canon's new point-and-shoot, the PowerShot V1. The PowerShot V1 leans heavily into the video world with a host of upgrades like an upgraded 1.4-inch 22.3 megapixel sensor, improved subject tracking for people and animals, several self-filming assist shooting modes, Canon Log 3, and an all-new body design more suited to making videos. The first thing I noticed when I got my hands on the V1 was that it was, for its size, a comfortable shape, and it had a really nice rubber texture on the grip. The next thing I noticed was that the built-in lens was a 17 to 52 mm f2.8 to 4.5 full-frame equivalent. I'm assuming that Canon had to make some changes due to the bigger sensor size, but it is interesting to note that the G7X Mark III had a 24 to 100 mm f1.8 to 2.8 full-frame equivalent lens. I think in comparison to the G7X Mark III, they've made the V1 more ergonomic. Cameras of this size can often feel a bit cramped, and though to a certain degree this camera has the same problem, there have been some good improvements. Firstly, the exposure compensation dial has been replaced with a photo-video switch, which keeps settings for video and photo separate, and second, the record button is now beside the shutter button, and finally, where the record button was on the GX7 Mark III, there is now a manual function button. Another major change focused on video is the built-in cooling fan. This for sure helps with the max operating time of over 2 hours. Of course, the fan has several operating modes, so if you are recording sound, you can turn the fan off or set it to only come on if it's absolutely needed. Something else to mention about the body of this camera is its I/O. And considering the V1 size, we have a decent amount of it. The I/O on this camera is a micro HDMI port, headphone and mic jacks, and a USB-C port. Finally, the V1 has multiple ways to record audio, the previously mentioned mic jack, the 3 mics built into the camera that work together to record your audio and reduce background noise, and the multifunction hot shoe that can be combined with a variety of first and third-party accessories like the Tascam XLR microphone adapter. Here is an example outside of what the internal mics sound like. This is the internal audio from the 3 internal speakers of the PowerShot V1, and you can be the judge as to whether that sounds good or not. I have actually done nothing to affect its levels. I took it right out of the box, and this is the first audio recording that I'm doing with it. I'm also using the dead cat on the top, so any wind should be muffled out, but there are actually 3 microphones inside this camera, 2 that do the actual recording of your audio, and then a third for doing noise reduction. So let me know in the comments how this sounds. So that's the body of the camera sorted. Now it's all about what's on the inside. The V1 has an all-new 22.3 megapixel 1.4-inch or Type 1.4 CMOS sensor. It's about twice the area of the G7X Mark II's 1-inch sensor and about 8 times larger than the sensors found in recent PowerShot ELPH and PowerShot SX series cameras. In fact, the V1's new sensor isn't that much smaller than APS-C sensor sizing, which will for sure help with shooting in lower light situations. For shooting speeds in video, we are looking at a max of 4K 30p oversampled from the 5.7K sensor, or 60p, which gets cropped by 1.4 times, and then in full HD up to 59.97 with sound, or up to 119 frames per second with no sound. It is a little bit disappointing that the 4K 60p is cropped, but if you consider that the cropped frame size on the V1 is about the same size as a 1-inch sensor's maximum frame size, the loss feels a little bit less significant. Some other improvements that come to the sensor are dual pixel CMOS autofocus 2 for PowerShot and the replacement of contrast-based autofocus with phase detection autofocus. This combination opens up features like subject detection for people and animals, and the animals is specifically tuned to be really good for cats and dogs. There are some other major features coming to the V1, and they are intended to make self-filming a breeze. These shooting modes are movie close-up for demos, subject tracking IS, and movie IS modes. Movie close-up for demos is a great feature to use if you are talking to camera and often hold things in front of you for demonstration purposes. Think cooking tutorials, makeup or fashion demos, or gear review type content. Essentially, this feature tells the camera to pay attention to whatever is closest to it. Subject tracking IS is a reframing tool that adds a slight crop and uses the extra sensor space to reframe and keep you in the center of frame. And Movie IS mode is another reframing tool that essentially works as an in-camera version of image stabilization. It works the same way image stabilization works in video editing software, in that this mode crops into the image so that there is more area available to stabilize the image. So again, if you do a lot of self-filming, these features could be very useful to you. To me, the movie close-up for demos mode is by far the most useful for people making speaking to camera content. Some last things to mention about the video features of the V1 are the color profiles. There are several pre-made filters for video that can add a look onto your footage, possibly saving you time in post. Alternatively, if you want to get more control of your color, you can use the fantastic Canon Log 3 color profile and treat your footage with a greater level of control in post. This makes it easier to pair the V1 with Canon's higher-end cameras as a backup or B camera for something like an interview. One last feature I'd like to mention is that you can use the V1 as a webcam for live streaming or video calls, as it has full UVC UAC support. So even though this camera is mainly focused on video enthusiasts, that doesn't mean that this camera takes underwhelming photos, because there for sure will be times that you want to take pictures with it. Again, with its 22.3 megapixels, there is more than enough resolution for social media content. Also, the fact that you get multiple creative modes and full manual control means you're never lacking in options. Additionally, the stills capture rates are not slouching at all. When using the electronic shutter, you can get a max burst rate of 30 frames per second at up to a 16,000th of a second shutter speed. So with those speeds, you can be fast enough to capture almost anything. With a form factor like the V1 has, a built-in lens and quality microphones, it's a perfect camera to take with you anywhere. From vacations to video calls, the V1's got your back. So get it today at Vistek.ca. See you on the next one.